Good day to you, everyone. I'm Corcanum, and this is Factually Fictitious. Ever since I was a child, I dreamed of making a model train set that had all these cars assembled, like a beautiful hotel on wheels, traveling around the country. But model trains are expensive, and 1/72nd scale tanks, they're more in my budget. This has been a big year for me. COVID was great fun, aside from the agony. What I did get out of it was an opportunity to watch Girls und Panzer, something I had heard about but never really made the time for. It sounded interesting, a martial arts team tournament anime, but in tanks. It sounded real gimmicky, so I never got around to it. Gasping for air in bed, I finally made time for it, though. And I really, really liked this show. Perhaps it was the fun, or maybe the low oxygen level, but I enjoyed it. I find it to be a little like Spice and Wolf, only in the sense that it weirdly works better than the premise would lead you to believe. There's been moe slice-of-life anime for years, and the tank thing really sets us apart from those. The human characters have these story arcs, some of them not really resolved, really most of them, and it's okay and everything, but you really just want to get back to the tank battles. They're absurd, they never work in reality, and while the show is pretty silly, it finds a way to take these battles semi-seriously. It's somehow both self-aware and silly while playing these fights straight. Sometimes too much so. They're compelling, you just want to see what they're going to do next. So yeah, it's gimmicky, but it's a gimmick that pays off. I said human characters, didn't I? I think it's important to make a distinction. The main tank crew gets a little more story, but the rest of this large cast is pretty paper thin. Each tank on the team has a theme for the crew. The main girl and friends in one, the student council in another, history club, volleyball team, freshmen. Each tank has 3 to 6 crew in it. And this is just the main school. They face off against all these other schools in the tournament, though you don't really get to see more than 2 or 3 of each team from that school. Thin characters like this would be a real detriment to the show, but it's not, because those crew are not the main characters. The individual members are not characters. The main characters, the real ones, are the tanks. They don't talk or anything, it's not like cars. But the tanks are like people, and the crews within them are more like the emotions from Inside Out.
Well, I just saved our lives. Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, the tank crews as a whole are the characters, I guess. This right here, this looks like 5 characters, but it's really 1. They each have dynamics within the tank and their team shtick, and that is what forms the personality of the tank, of the crew of the tank. How it performs in battle, what it does. For the other schools, the tanks are more extensions of the bodies and personalities of the commander for them. And every school other than the main one is based on stereotypes of the country whose tanks they use. You have the chivalrous British school, the girls all named after teas, the loud American school that isn't above cheating, and the icy brute force of the Soviet school. Now, I am just a pinch uncomfortable with weapons being used as toys and sports equipment with this. But I think that right there is one of the points it's making. Sports are largely based around combat, and many of them using weapons in some form. This just cranks that up until we're dealing with tanks. In the world of the show, tankery, or sanshado, is seen as a feminine activity, something that teaches girls discipline, strength, and grace. Not as much as flower arranging, but some degree of grace.
To learn tankery is to armor the heart of a maiden, the soul that embraces and burns with femininity, intense and strong like a tank's iron, cute and lively like the clattering of its track, and finally, passionate and precise like its main cannon.
It's rather forced and arbitrary, but is not the sentiment that flower arranging is for girls also arbitrary? Men work as florists, and many women hate flowers. We have these gendered sports. Naginata-do, or the way of the naginata, is seen as a feminine sport in Japan. These are historic Japanese weapons that became part of the curriculum for girls in the early 1900s. Does this really make any more sense than Sensho-do, the way of the tank, being seen as a feminine sport? And to top it all off, it twists around and gives the finger to gender roles. These big masculine machines right here? Nope, they're feminine. This is a sport for girls, by girls, of girls. And this cast is heavily female. You have, like, 2 named male characters in the entire show, and perhaps 2 more get lines. The rest are all girls and women. And the tanks. I didn't forget about the tanks. As a fandom, we tend to dismiss media featuring or directed toward girls. Really, society hates girls and things appealing to girls in general. Moe is often dismissed as just cute girls doing cute things. For all that each may be enjoyable, things can get a little repetitive if you view a bunch. Tankery here really sets us apart in the moe field. It's what it says on the tin, Girls and Panzers. Listen, there's no illusion here. This is a show made to be one where girls fight in tanks, and it is viewed as a show where girls fight in tanks. But along the way, they included a deconstruction of gender roles. It's more than just its premise and its silliness. There's something deeper here. Gender roles can be pretty arbitrary. We view gendered attributes according to the lens handed to us. We see tanks as tough and dangerous. We see combat as the domain of men. In this show, the aspects of the tank are all attributed to femininity. And by fighting in tanks, girls will become great wives and mothers and all that.
If you train in tankery, you will become a better wife, a better mother, a better student, and a better worker. You will become healthier, kinder, stronger, and men from all over the world will fall at your feet.
I mean, that's sexist, but okay.
How we see gender in many things is based not on biology, anatomy, psychology, or identity, but on social constructs. Some more historically minded people may take issue with how these tanks are used. They have tanks more suited to supporting infantry than going up against other tanks. And all these tanks are operating at speeds far exceeding their capabilities. And on top of that, they frequently engage in drifting, something absolutely
inconceivable.
You also have all these girls fighting with live ammunition and not getting hurt. They explain this by saying, it's used in a way that's safe. But that explains nothing. I hear these complaints and my response is, just sit down and watch girls shoot each other in tanks. The thing about this is, the show isn't taking that aspect seriously at all. It's not about that. You can just look past it and enjoy the fun. The tanks themselves are computer generated. They do look a little different from the rest of the world. It's not too strong, it's nearly seamless. Not quite seamless, but sufficiently close enough. Critically, it doesn't ruin your immersion or pull you out. The characters look a little worse when they stick out of the hatches during battle, but they are almost always moving quickly or distantly in these shots, mitigating this effect. The voice acting is fine. Sometimes it felt like the actors might not have been cast or directed as well as they could have, but they do fine work. The cast is talented, I'm not criticizing them, and this wasn't really an issue as I watch things. It's, I'm more for the tanks. I forgot about it as soon as I became immersed. The music is well suited to the show. Very military, so much tanks, wow. One thing that actually did pull me from my immersion just a little bit is this one song that really feels like the opening song from Recess. My main criticism is the show's Wehraboo appeal. Wehraboo being a portmanteau of Wehrmacht and Wehraboo. You have a lot of militant imagery, including some specifically Nazi imagery. There are a lot of tanks utilized by the Axis powers in World War II, and a school with a Wehrmacht aesthetic, though they are antagonists. These serious things are used for aesthetics rather than ideology, like with a character taking visual cues from war criminal Erwin Rommel. But even with sticking to the realm of aesthetics, militarism and fascism are made light and cuddly. We go over this in greater detail in our essay on fascism in anime. I don't think it's a show that shouldn't have been made, certainly. I do like it. Really ending this interview on a high note, I guess. Hey everyone, I really like the show aside from the Nazi stuff. I would rate it an 8 overall. It's absurd, but it's a fun absurd. And isn't that what television is really all about?